Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, we look at the Ten Commandments, which may become required in Texas public schools, which is great. Meanwhile, SNL, Saturday Night Live, decides to go full demonic ritual, and it's just wild. Finally, Trump cracks down on trans insanity in schools, especially the colleges. We'll talk a little bit about that. And two space cowboys return to Earth via Elon's rocket ship, which the left now hates because the left is just silly. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. All right, everybody, welcome back. Really glad that you decided to join me today. Really appreciate you. And, I really, if you've not done the subscriptions, whether it is clicking the like button or the subscribe or the share or leave a 5-star review, if you're on one of those platforms, that would be wonderful. If you're listening on audio, thank you very much. If you want to see the video, you can go to YouTube's. Probably it'll be up there, depending on how they feel about me today. I'll upload to Rumble as well. And last but not least, you can go to the new Church Public Substack, churchpublic.com/ I believe it's I did that wrong. It's not churchpublic.com. You can go to churchpublic.com. That's a wonderful place. I'll post the video there, but you can go to substack.com/@churchpublic. There's a lot of different places. Anyway, wherever you find me, I appreciate you, and it's really good to have you here today. Try to bring you current events from a Christian perspective to help you live out your faith because, my goodness, it is a wild world out there. And although some of the things have changed with the new administration, really that doesn't change the fact that the devil just does not like you or Christianity or God and really wants to get rid of any of those things. So we look at that. We look at the anti-Christianity in the current day and figure out what is going on with that. Or occasionally, and I do try to bring these in, I do try to intentionally find some stories that are good of good things that are going on, because if I didn't try, it would be all just bad and terrible, ridiculous, bad news and persecution of Christianity and things like that. So I do try to find things that are actually good and good news, and I wanted to start out with one of those today. So first of all, the Texas Senate passes a bill to require the Ten Commandments in public schools. Now, there is obviously a lot of controversy about this. People just hate the Ten Commandments, and they hate Christianity and hate God. All of those things are just evidently true. And we see that over and over again. And I mean, the Ten Commandments, listen, if you are younger, you probably may not even know that the Ten Commandments were in every school until the 50s, late 50s or so, early 60s. And then some longer, but essentially they were outlawed in schools somewhere along that time. And so they were there. And now when people are like, oh, let's put them back in, they're like, oh, you can't put the Ten Commandments in schools. Of course you can. They were there for almost 200 years, and then they weren't. And then everybody's like, oh, that's the way it's always been. It's just the consistent rewriting of history where you're like, oh, well, it's never been that way. No, of course it was that way. And we are a Christian nation. And even though we don't want to be at this time, like, that's just the reality of how it was for a long time. And it'd be great. I think it's great. I'm all for this. So first of all, here, that I'm all for this. Second, this is going to be the controversial take of the day. I'm not sure, but this is not going to change anything. Oh, yeah, you're like, Matt, that's ridiculous. Of course, everybody needs to do the Ten Commandments. Yes, I agree. Everyone should do the Ten Commandments. Now, hear me. Let's get theological for 35 seconds. You cannot be saved through the Ten Commandments. You cannot. That was the whole point of Jesus. This is the whole Old Testament. If you're just listening, I'm holding up a Bible. The whole Old Testament is the story of the law being given to God's people, the story of the law not working because no one can possibly follow the law. Read Romans. A great place to start on that if you have more questions about that. So can't possibly follow all of the law. Then comes Jesus. So the law is not possible to give you salvation. However, Jesus repeatedly, Paul repeatedly, most, if not all, I'm trying to think if it's all off the top of my head. I'll just say most, just to be safe, of the New Testament writers remind us that we must follow the law, not out of the need to gain salvation. Paul, Ephesians 2, reminds us, by grace you've been saved through faith. It is not anything you did. It is by no of your works. It is a gift of God so that no one can boast. And the very next verse, Ephesians 2:10, you are God's workmanship, created in advance to do God's good works. That's my paraphrase. Go and read it. I'm fairly close to that. So, all that to say, works cannot equal salvation, but we do have things to do. You don't just get to sit around and go, oh, I'm in grace now, so I don't have to do anything. No, that's not how any of this works. So, 10 Commandments. What does this have to do with 10 Commandments in schools? I love that the 10 Commandments are going to be in more schools. I hope this passes completely in all of the legislation for Texas and every other state in the union, and everyone should have the 10 Commandments everywhere. The problem is this won't change anything because people who hate God don't care what his commandments are. Hear that again. I'm going to say it again. People who hate God do not care what his commandments are. So it doesn't matter if you post them on the wall. They're just going to go, yeah, I don't care. I'm not doing that. I pulled up this verse as I was thinking about this. Proverbs 4:19. The way of the wicked is like darkness. They don't know what they stumble over. There are things people are doing wrong. These people are in the darkness. They don't know what they're stumbling over. They don't care what they're stumbling over. You read Romans 1 and 2 and 3 about this. Like, the people's hearts have been darkened. They don't understand why they do the things they do. They cannot do the right things. So here's my controversial statement of the day. We need to put the 10 Commandments back up in church. Think about this. I remember when I was a kid, and everywhere I turned in the church that I grew up in was the 10 Commandments on the wall. Really. I mean, that's just how I grew up. What church have you visited lately? Or your church? Think about this. Does your church have the 10 Commandments up somewhere visibly, like in the main area where you see it every day? My guess is no. So here's my next question for you. If you asked 100 people at your church, what are the 10 Commandments? How many would get all 10? My guess is not very many. How many would get all 5? Would people even know any of the 10 Commandments in your church? I have no idea. My guess is very few actually know all of the 10 Commandments. And think about how mind-boggling that is. Yes, I am celebrating that the 10 Commandments will go into public schools in Texas. Great. I hope they do. Everyone needs to know these, though. Like, why do we not know these? And people are like, oh, you're being legalistic. Like, the 10 Commandments are not good. Okay, go to the 10 Commandments. Which ones are not good? You tell me which of the 10 Commandments you don't want to do anymore. And again, if you can't see, I'm opening my Bible right now. I'm just gonna look. We'll just it's Exodus 20. In case you forgot where the 10 Commandments were. Here's one. Here's one. Have no other gods before me. So do you want to have idols? Do you want to have different gods? I'll do one more. I'll do one more for you. How about this? Let's see. Let's pick a good one. This will be a good one. How about you shall not murder? That was just a random one that I looked at. Is that a bad 10 Commandment at this point? People are like, oh, you can't study the laws because the laws is legalism, and then you're not having a relationship with Jesus. I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't speak for God in any way, though I could read you verses where Jesus says this. I'm pretty sure Jesus does not want you to murder. Pretty sure about that. This is not controversial in a Christian world, but go to your church and look. Go this weekend. Do you see the 10 Commandments anywhere? Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But I'm just saying, the church needs to be the place. I say this a lot, but I'm going to keep saying it. The church needs to be the place where theology and culture come from. Legislation is great. You cannot legislate theology. You can legislate morality. That's what all laws do, and we've talked about that. I can talk about that more later. But your beliefs have to come from outside of government, and the government enforces your beliefs. That's how this all works. So it's great that they're putting it back in, but really where this needs to begin is in the church. And again, I hope that it does. Okay, let's keep going. I spent too much time on that already. Okay, so this, I look at these stories and I go, why did I choose this? I don't even want to talk about this. Okay, I wrote it down. so we're going to talk about it. Saturday Night Live, which hasn't been funny in decades. Maybe it never was at this point. Though I remember being younger and laughing at Saturday Night Live. And I think at some point, at least parts of it were funny, but it's just not anymore. So this was a skit. I did not do a video clip of this skit, and I recommend you don't go watch this video clip. It does exist. You can go watch this video if you want to. I'm not recommending that you do. I watched it so you don't have to, but this happened, and it was on Saturday Night Live, and I just need to say those things. So I'm not going to quote most of the script of this skit. I'm not going to show you a video of this skit. I'm showing you one picture if you're watching, and that is it's two people dressed up as demons, I guess, or whatever, and then a Satan worshiper, and then they summon another demon, which is not in this picture, and it doesn't matter. And that's all you need to know about that. So here's what happens. Saturday Night Live turned a dinner party into a satanic ritual where Lady Gaga summoned a demon and then performed human sacrifices. And you're like, Matt, this doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It does matter. It does matter. Here's why it matters. It's on television, public television. It's in front of millions. I mean, I don't know how many people watch this. I don't know if anybody watches this anymore, but potentially millions of people have seen this Saturday Night Live. From a biblical perspective, there's a lot of verses that condemn the practice of anything occult. Isaiah 47:13. Don't do astrology. Don't predict things from the stars. That's horoscopes, by the way. If you're doing that, don't do that. And Deuteronomy 18 says, don't do divination, witchcraft, sorcery, etc. Finally, Ephesians 6:11, where we're talking about the armor of God, it says, put on the whole armor of God so that you can stand against the devil, his schemes, and that we're all in a spiritual battle and fight against these occult practices. So it's bad to have demonic rituals, period. It's bad to have demonic rituals on TV. It's not neutral. It's not funny. I mean, that was a question. Is this even funny? You haven't watched it. I hope you haven't watched it. But I did watch it, and it wasn't even funny. The only reason that there's laughing in it is that somebody in the back pressed the button for laughing, because you have the laugh button. If you don't know media at all, like there's a button where you can press a button and it's laughing, but it's not real. Everyone knows this, right? I think everyone knows this. So it's a demonic ritual. Why are they doing this? There's two sides, and I'll talk about one, then I'll talk about the other. Maybe they really believe in the power. I'm not sure. Here's a great quote from a movie several years back that I always think about when I think about this.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
So I think that's maybe a thing. It's that we're trying to convince the world that this is just funny and it's not real. So maybe they really believe in the power, or maybe they really don't believe in the power. I don't know. Both of these things are bad, and both of these sides of the road in the middle, a ditch on one side and a ditch on the other, both of them are bad, and they lead to bad things. Now, in this skit, they summon a quote-unquote real demon. And what I mean by that is they summon a demon. I was going to say the name. I'll say it just because it is real and historic, but Lamashtu is the demon that they summon. This, and the only reason I'm saying the name is that it is an historic Mesopotamian goddess that is historically documented. Therefore, quote unquote, real. And I do believe that demons are real, just to put that out there. This is not great. Lamashtu, just for reference, and you can look this up historically, was a demonic goddess in Mesopotamian mythology who was particularly known and feared for stealing children, great, particularly newborns and unborn babies. So, abortion, wonderful. She ate children, drank their blood, and caused other diseases. So, not a particularly great one. And I don't even know if I've ever mentioned the context of this whole skit. So, the context of this skit is a person sits down at dinner and they ask, is it your birthday? So you can have a free birthday meal. And a person at the table says yes, and that's a lie. And so then you have to go to hell because you lied. Speaking of the Ten Commandments again. And I guess at some level in the writer's room, they thought that was funny, but it's not funny. And it turns into a demonic ritual where not only are they summoning this demon, but they're using an ancient dialect to chant demonic incantations to summon this demon. So, like, I don't know what you believe, and I again, that's why I'm not playing this, and I don't encourage you to go watch it at all. But summoning demons, period, is not a great idea. You may not believe it, but that can have spiritual contexts, spiritual consequences. I don't think you want demons hanging around you. I would not encourage you summoning demons. I shouldn't have to say this, like, obviously, but this was happening on Saturday Night Live. So, and I don't know if I mentioned already, like, the star of this show is Lady Gaga. So, maybe you're not surprised by that. And it probably was her idea. I don't know. I have no idea. But none of this is probably surprising to you if you have followed Lady Gaga's journey. She's been dealing demonic things for years. But my point is this: the next time that you are listening to the radio or streaming a song, you start singing along to Lady Gaga's music, be careful. You don't know exactly what she's saying or exactly what she means, and clearly this has some implication into the things that she believes and means. So, most of the demonic things that you run into is not this overt. The devil seems to be getting less and less interested in hiding from my perspective. But no, most of the demonic influences are more subtle and simply just distracting you from acknowledging that Jesus is Lord and living in his freedom. If you haven't, again, if you're just listening, I'm holding up the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Great little book. It's not a long read. It's fascinating because it deals with kind of the alternate view where a demon is talking to a younger demon on how to demonize people. And you say, oh, that's too scary. I don't want to read that. And that's fine. It's not as scary as you think, because ultimately what happens is the older demon says, don't be so overt in your pushing. Like, basically, you just have to distract them 1 degree, and then they'll be not following God, and that's enough. So it's interesting in that we always think this, like, Saturday Night Live and demons actually appearing and all this other stuff is what happens, and that is possible as a reality. But I think more the actual reality is much, much more subtle than that. What I like that he says, in fact, in his introduction to this book, is that he reminds us that there's a couple different things going on, and he says there's 2 equal and opposite errors which our race, humans, can fall about devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence, and that is what we just saw in that clip. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people he didn't exist. But the other is to believe and to feel an unhealthy and excessive interest in them. So we don't want to fall on either side of that. I would just say, again, follow the Ephesians 6 way, that no, you are in a spiritual battle. It is true. It is real. And you can put on the full armor of God and take your stand against the devil's schemes. So if you have like spiritual questions about that I've not covered, read Ephesians 6 in more depth. In fact, you can search in the church public archives. I believe I go through Ephesians 6 at length at some point, and maybe I'll do another episode on that as well, because that's something that people seem to want. Drop a comment if you want to hear more about Ephesians 6, and I'll do more. Okay, we'd be wise to heed these dangers. Let's keep going. This section I titled, Everyone is Just Really Confused. So This is just a section where I say everyone is confused, or AKA, what is a woman? Remember, okay, so we're going to go through just a couple of stories that I found on this, because I want to stop talking about this, but apparently we have to keep talking about this because we still have no idea what any of this means. So remember that one guy who decided to switch teams at Penn State. And what I mean by that is Will Thomas, or Leah Thomas, as he likes to be called, decided to join the women's swim team and went on to win the NCAA women's 500 freestyle in that championship in 2022. And that caused quite a stir, because obviously he is a man swimming against women and beat them by incredible margins in any sport, especially in the swimming world. So great news here. The Trump administration has promised to suspend some funds all over the country, but in particular to Penn State, or University of Pennsylvania. I said Penn State, that's wrong. University of Pennsylvania. The Trump administration has promised to suspend, $175 million in funding over this. An email provided to CBS Philadelphia, the White House officials confirmed the university's handling of the situation with Thomas was connected to the decision. So great news. All of that ridiculousness that happened, which shouldn't have in the first place, but all of that ridiculousness that happened is finally coming to some kind of head by pulling funding to a university that's clearly making political and ideological decisions rather than decisions that are best for people, and especially women. So I'm sure you all remember this event, and I won't go too much into detail on it again. And maybe you saw that many of the girls were forced to change in the same locker room as this boy, and they were interviewed about how terrible that was. And that is just absolutely terrible. And as a father, especially a father of a daughter, I would be really furious if something like that happened. And not saying my salvation would be at stake, but I would be very furious if something like that happened. So it should not even be controversial that young women forced to change in front of men is gross and potentially dangerous. That shouldn't be controversial, but in this day and age it is, because we don't know what a woman is and we don't know what a man is, and we say that they're the same, even though obviously, and I say obviously, they're not the same. Now we have a new administration that seems to operate in more common sense, which is wonderful, and they're changing this in meaningful ways, in meaningful $170 million ways, which is great. We can hope for more of this. But in the meantime, unfortunately, as I was coming across this article, about the same time I came across another article that is in a way related, where an Illinois mother of a 13-year-old girl recounted an horrific story to her school board last week about her daughter, 13 years old again, being forced to change in front of a boy. And I do mean forced. Listen to this.
And oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Gosh. I'm pressing the wrong buttons all over the place. Sorry, stand by. Here we go. Technical difficulties. Here we go.
The same day, Assistant Superintendent Joanna Ford, Kathy Van Treese, and multiple teachers all came into the girls' locker room, making them change into uniform. This went on all week with the addition of Ginger Laugerman. My daughter refused to take part in having her privacy being violated. How dare they? She ran out and called for me for help.
So that was a small clip. You can go watch the whole clip if you want to. The longer clip explains that this 13-year-old girl and all of her classmates who change in the girls' locker room because they're girls were informed that a 13-year-old boy had decided to be a girl and was going to change in their locker room. They said no, and as you just heard, a bunch of the school administrators then marched the 13-year-old girls into the girls' locker room with the boy and forced them to change. Again, I'm trying to moderate my emotions on this, but this is unbelievable. And it's so frustrating. And this lady, I think, was emotionally charged, rightly so, and also held her composure incredibly well. After this, I actually watched a little bit more of this. I'm not going to play it right now. You can go watch it if you want to. But some other activists got up and yelled at her for making an unsafe space for boys changing in women's locker rooms, which is just wild how opposite things are. At any rate, this is going to keep happening until we remember what a woman is and what a man is. So the whole bottom line here, because we look at current events from a Christian perspective, and so the theological, the Christian worldview, the Bible view of this is that if we keep removing the guidelines, keep removing the reality of what is a male and what is a female, this is actually the obvious outcome. It's not surprising this is where we are, because for decades and decades at this point, we've said women can do the same things as men, and removed barriers, putting women into men's areas. Now, men have said the same things. And well, if women can be the same as men, then men can be the same as women. So everybody's the same. And so why does it matter if a man is in a woman's locker room? And of course, that's the obvious outcome. It's the obvious philosophical end point of if everyone is the same, then everyone is the same. And so none of this matters. And that's their answer to the question, what is a woman? Their answer is whatever you feel like. It's whatever you want it to be, whenever you want. And you can change whenever you want. And although they will argue at some points that it's immutable and it's coming from inside, really, they change all the time based on however they feel. The real answer to this question is actually more simple. It's just what God said. Again, like none of this is new. None of this is surprising or difficult. Again, if you're just listening, I'm holding up my Bible and I will flip to like quite literally the first page or rather the first chapter of the first book in your Bible in Genesis, when it says that God is creating everything. Great story here. Great retelling of the world. And then verse 27, God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So, I mean, really, that's all you have to read. The next one is he blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. So those two verses, Genesis 1, 27 and 28, very clearly show there's only male and female. And male and female are designed to be connected together. We later call that marriage. So this eliminates all of the confusion. Now, of course, people don't believe this, and that goes back to the Ten Commandments issue that I was talking about. And people fight against this, and you can fight against God all you want, but it doesn't make anything you say or feel or conclude true. It just makes you crazy. It just makes you into a place where you're trying to ignore reality, ignore biology, ignore scriptural truth, truth is defined by God. You can argue with that, but it doesn't change the fact that that's what's true. Truth is lived out in Christ. Christ is the truth. You can't escape it no matter how hard you try, even though you might want to. And I have to end this segment by saying, and the biggest problem in our society today is this toxic empathy where you want to just love people because they tell us that love is love, so just do whatever people want. But I'm going to say this as gently as I can. Lying is not loving. You telling lies to people to make them feel better doesn't help. Yes, you can tell true things and hurt people. That's not what I'm talking about. But by lying to people, you're not loving them. You're just confusing them more. Stop lying to people. And to go back to our 10 Commandments again, remember commandment number 9. Don't lie. This is where we need to know the 10 Commandments. We need to live out the 10 Commandments. No, the 10 Commandments do not save you, but you cannot live without following these things because it just devolves into shenanigans and ridiculousness. So this leads to the final story where a talk show host is just really confused and babbles for a while and then destroys her own argument. She's referring, this is Whoopi Goldberg on The View. She's referring to Gavin Newsom, whom I played for you. I'll just play it again. This is Newsom and Charlie Kirk talking, where Charlie is asking Newsom about women and girls sports, so a very similar and connected issue. And surprisingly, Governor of California, Newsom, agrees. Listen to this.
So you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So
I'm just going to pause there because that's really all you need to hear. You can go and listen to the rest of it. It's good. I don't believe a word Gavin says, by the way, but at the same time, he said it. So the superstar of the Democratic Party who has led California into the dumpster, but everyone loves him for it, apparently, agrees that men should not be in women's sports and it's unfair. Correct. That is a correct statement. Now, I don't believe that he actually believes this. I think he's just looking to be president at some point. That's my guess. I have no idea if that's true. So this leads us to Whoopi Goldberg with Dylan Mulvaney. You guys may or may not remember Dylan Mulvaney. Is that still his name? Did he change his name to a girl name? I don't know. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. So he did the whole day in the life of a girl, not just a woman, but a girl. So he is also on the very confused what is a woman train. And Dylan doesn't talk in this, but he is dressed up as a woman if you're just listening. So Whoopi goes on a tirade about Gavin and about women and something else, and ends up, I think, dismantling her whole argument. But let's listen to this for a second.
Yeah, her friend it went from female to male and is competing with other
So
males.
Gavin doesn't have a problem with that.
Well, I think part of the problem that the trans community is facing, and it's the same problem that women face, is if you don't know anything about our bodies, you don't know how it works. So when you come in and you say, oh, these are men,
competing
against women, you're assuming that the women are weak and just can't do anything except be here. Have you seen female athletes? They know what they're doing. So I'm not sure what's going on or why this is an issue. The same for me as when people say, oh, I don't know how I feel about you. You do. God doesn't make mistakes.
No.
And the challenge is not to the trans people, it's to the people who are not trans. That's what God is looking to see, how you treat people.
Yeah.
That's what...
Okay, so, I mean, I can't fault her because she doesn't say what God she's talking to. I assume she's talking about the Christian God or maybe the Jewish God. I don't know. I mean, maybe she's talking about one of the Hindu gods. I have no idea. She doesn't actually claim it, though it would be surprising if she was referring to another god. At any rate, she obviously is misquoting God and scripture and theology. Like, she's so far off. But let's back up and get to her argument, because first she says the problem with some of the trans arguments is that you don't understand their bodies, just like you don't understand women's bodies. I actually agree with that assertion. Yes, because there's no such thing as a trans body, because there are only men's and women's bodies. Now, you can do whatever kind of surgical and medical procedures you want, but it doesn't change what your body is. But somehow that argument for her is arguing for trans people. She's like, how can you say you're a woman if you don't understand a woman's body? And I would agree to some degree, like, sure, right. Isn't that an argument against being trans? Isn't that an argument saying, like, if you're a man trying to be a woman, you don't understand what it's like to be a woman, you can't be a woman? But that's not her argument, but I would make that argument. I mean, like, sure, correct. You, as a man, you're never going to understand what a woman's body is doing. Like, yes, that's right. I don't know. And then she goes on to say, like, that women athletes are great at being women athletes. Sure, that's altogether true. I don't know if I have it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. The story that comes to mind for me is Serena Williams. Was it high school? Serena Williams, I believe some would say, like, the best tennis player. I don't know if I can find it here. Gosh, I can't find it. There was a story. I'm gonna do one more search here. This is like real time search, and I didn't do this. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I can't find it. I know that at one point she played like a high school tennis person and just got destroyed. Like, I'm pretty sure you can fact check me on that. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard that story. Anyway, all to say, like, you could say that men and women are the same and they're the same in sports, but, like, the reality is not true. So let's just take football. Let's go to another example that's clearly obvious. Like, what women are playing men's football right now because they want to. I don't know if you remember. Here's another story. Like, there was a lady who joined the NFL, and she did like one kick, and it was ridiculous. And then I never heard from her again. I like, it doesn't happen because they're not the same. And like, why is this controversial? Like, why can't we just say, hey, men and women are not the same, and that's okay? Okay, let's keep going, because we're back to Genesis 1 and 2. So she ends by saying God doesn't make mistakes. Okay. I also agree with that. God doesn't make mistakes. I'm not going to read the same thing again for you because I just read it. But if you turn back to Genesis 1 and 2, verse, or Genesis 1, verse 27, 28, you can read Genesis 2. God made humanity very clearly, made humanity male and female very clearly, and then connected them together. So that formed a marriage and a family, period. Like that's it. So any confusion beyond male and female is not God making a mistake. I completely agree with that. It is that there's brokenness and sin in the world, and that's a problem. And it's a problem that there's brokenness and sin in the world, and we need to declare the goodness and the kingdom of God in the world, because that is what is reality, and the good news of Jesus Christ paying for sin. So from there, let's look at something good. I try to do this each and every time. I know we started with the Texas thing, but this is an even better story. I love this. And this is Romans 8:28. We know all things. God works for the good of those who love him and been called again to his purpose. So again, this is not that. Yeah, we'll just leave that. Okay, so unfortunately, there have been astronauts stuck in space for 288 days. 288 days. This is wild. There were astronauts stuck in space. And they were stuck in space largely because of the last administration. They were stuck in space for 288 days. It was supposed to be 8 days, so 280 days more than they were supposed to be up there. Elon posted this a little bit ago, and he says the astronauts were only supposed to be up there for 8 days. Now have been up there for 8 months. SpaceX could have sent up another Dragon and brought them home 6 months ago, but the Biden White House, not NASA, refused to allow it. President Trump asked to bring them back as soon as possible, and so he did. They got back this week. Many of you may have seen that video. I'll play a little bit of the video in a second. But it's just wild that the previous administration apparently was just blocking the astronauts from getting home because now they hate Elon because he is pro-Trump, and so everything. I didn't even pull any of these clips, but they're destroying like more than a dozen Tesla dealerships and charging stations have been destroyed by fire and Molotov cocktails and vandalism, and people are shooting them with shotguns and stuff. Like wild stuff happening because they hate him so much, which also is wild because sure, he's doing Doge and Department of Education and things like that. That has nothing to do with electric cars. Does anyone realize destroying an electric car, which you say climate change is so bad, but you're going to destroy the #1 electric car in the world? But that has nothing to do with the work that he's doing at the White House. No one sees the difference here. Apparently not. So at any rate, that mission was blocked for a long time, and then they finally made it home. So that's fantastic. But then when they made it home, I was watching, and this was one of the videos, and I'll play it, and then you listen to hear if you can hear what happens here.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
How do you
not pay attention to dolphins?
I know, you're like the Mother Earth sent a welcome home party of a pod of dolphins. It's pretty incredible and magical in its way.
Okay, so if you couldn't hear that, or if you're just listening, you didn't see it. So this is the pod in the ocean. There's a big thing that's going to pick it up and get the astronauts back home. There's dolphins swimming around the pod. Super cool. God's great. I've been in nature, been in the ocean with dolphins many times. The host who's talking is like, "Oh, great, Mother Earth sent a welcome party to welcome the astronauts home." Oh, and you're like, Matt, this doesn't matter. It's just a silly thing to say. No, it does matter. It matters. Here's why it matters. And I know you're like, "Oh, you're being too nitpicky." You can say that, but it's wrong. You're just wrong. This is not nitpicky, and here's why. Our beliefs lead to our actions. We need to understand what we believe so we can do the right things. If you believe that there's some kind of deity creation thing called Mother Earth who is organizing the earth to either help you or harm you, you're going to act in really weird ways. I'm just telling you. And we see that playing out in all some weird climate things that people do. So if you think that Mother Earth is happy that astronauts came back from space and landed in the ocean, so Mother Earth is happy now and is going to send dolphins to show you how happy she is, I would say that's a weirder belief than believing that the creator of the universe who loves you and cares for you, organizes creation to try to draw you to him. Like I think that there is a weird, sometimes ambivalent, because sometimes they blame Mother Earth for like natural disasters because she's angry with you, but sometimes she loves you and sends dolphins. Like if that's your belief system, I think that's weirder than a creator God who created you intentionally and then wrote all of it down through his people for thousands of years, millennia, so you can read it and understand what he believes, rather than a sometimes angry, sometimes happy force or something that may or may not like you, but sometimes likes you when you're an astronaut and you land in the ocean and dolphins swim around you. Like really? And you're like, Matt, you're blowing this out of proportion. Yeah, maybe, but people talk like this and think like this, and what that leads to is then kids and generations grow up and think, I guess Mother Earth is really against me, or I guess I need to do more to make Mother Earth happy by recycling aluminum cans, and then maybe she'll send dolphins to swim with me next time I go in the ocean, which is magical, so that means she likes me. I mean, like, do you see how weird this gets? It gets weird. Like, we should know what we believe, and even little things lead to wild consequences, and then you start legislating things and say that you can't drive gasoline cars because they're polluting the environment, and so you can only drive electric cars, except for Elon's electric cars, which you have to blow up and burn down because we don't like him anymore, but it's still better for the environment, but we also don't like him. Like, do you see how wacky this gets? And it's not tethered to reality. Again, we're just like making things up as we go along rather than being foundational. Again, current events from a Christian perspective. That's why we talk about this. It does matter. This stuff really does matter because people really matter. And these people that make up things or believe correct things lead to policies that either benefit humanity or literally kind of destroy humanity. So we have to figure this out. Okay. The real part of the story, I know this is supposed to be something good, and I got on a tangent, which is important. But anyway, the real part of the story that I love is that an astronaut was up in space. One of the guys, it was Butch Wilmore, that was his name. By the way, we should bring back the name Butch, I think. So Butch Wilmore was asked, how has it been being stuck in space for these 280-something days? And here was his answer. I love this.
We're all the product of our life experiences, and this extended business trip of yours certainly qualifies. What is your life lesson or takeaway from these 9 months in space?
Well, in answer to your question, I can tell you honestly, my feeling on all of this goes back to my faith. It's bound in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He is working out his plan and his purposes for his glory throughout all of humanity, and how that plays into our lives is significant and important. And however that plays out, and I am content because I understand that. I understand that he's at work in all things. Some things are for the good. Go to Hebrews chapter 11. Some things look to us to be not so good, but it's all working out for his good for those that will believe. And that's the answer. So thanks for asking.
Man, I mean, that's it right there. I got nothing more to say. God is working out his plans and purposes for our good and for his glory. And we need to remember that all the time, even if we're stuck in space. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard. Have a great day. Once again, thank you so much for joining me here at Church Public. I hope that this was helpful to you. If it is, like, comment, review, share it, do all those good things. Send it to somebody who just needs to know more Jesus. I know this is weird and the stories are weird, but hopefully they help you learn how to live out your faith everywhere you go. God bless. Keep the faith.